Welcome to this very special episode, number 4 of Lemonade. And as you can see, I'm not in my own apartment, but coming to you live from my vacation in the beautiful Cape Town in South Africa. South Africa, I think that's how they say it, which is fitting as, well, do you know what? I was staying in this beautiful place called the Orangery, and I was thinking I might need to rebrand and call this Lemongerie or something, because it just feels like the perfect blend of everything that is Lemonade right now. So let me know what you think. Anyway, that's just me being silly. Back to this soulful space where we will be turning lemons into lemonade, working our way through life's very messy middle. And boy, is there a lot of that going around at the moment. Lots of transitions. It's been a while that I've had this theme front and center in my life, and I'm beginning to see that so many people are going through similar changes, given the headlines around the hot topic that is immigration. As somebody who moved to the US in 2019, it is hard not to feel affected by what's unfolding and what all of this actually means, not just for me, but for many across the world, as immigration has reached new heights. It's become one of the loudest and one of the most emotionally charged conversations in the world right now, especially in the US and in the UK and Europe and lots of different places. Policies are shifting, language is hardening, systems are tightening, and everything just feels like it's shrinking. The conversation is moving faster than the people that are living inside it. Right now, immigration, it's not just about movement. It's about so much more, like identity, safety, belonging, and who gets to feel at home where. And while the headlines focus on numbers and borders and outcomes, there are real people living real lives that are navigating uncertainty behind the scenes. So this episode is not about politics or policy. It's about the more human experience of what it takes to live between different systems, seasons, and versions of ourselves, because something deep happens when you move to another country. Many people are not just relocating, they're actually reassessing where they want to build their future, where do they belong, and what that stability means, what safety looks like. And that's very different for a lot of people, because as we move forwards, we've also got people that are returning to their homelands. Some people are just pausing and not doing anything because they're unsure and feel paralyzed with analysis paralysis. The ground is ever shifting. And so this episode is really for anybody who finds themselves living in that in-between space. And if, like me, you're carrying a ton of questions that you don't have answers for, I don't want you to feel like you've got to do that alone and that you have to have it all figured out, because I certainly don't. Lemonade is really a space that's for soft landings and small sips, for naming what's real without rushing through to the resolution. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just know that you are so welcome here. This is a conversation about the space between lives and passport press. The Lemon Drop, where I share a solo reflection before I dive into the main story. I just want to acknowledge that there's a particular tension when you're not quite in one country and you're not quite in another and you're somewhere in between. It's a place where you're celebrated, but you can be scrutinized, and you're protective of your culture, but you're ready to embrace a new one. And you then have the weight of things like admin and policies and borders and all that crazy stuff. You're carrying pride, but you're also cautious at the same time. So you walk that narrow road with grace and grit, and for me, God. It's like this inheritance as well that you carry through past generations that made moves and sacrifices across oceans and lands long before I ever did, all to give me a better life. And here I am, leaving that life to build another. So you have all these internal dialogues and weird conflicts within you as you weigh up the costs and the benefits of moving to a new country, what that really entails. And believe me, there are ups and there are downs, and there are joys and there are sorrows, and everyone's path is unique, but there are also some very shared themes, and that's what I'd like to talk about as we move into our Citrus Chronicle. I just want to share the human side of what immigration looks and feels like, because right now we're hearing and seeing so much about it in the news. We're getting a lot of headlines around visas and policies and politics and that kind of thing. But let's show you the human experience, because all those headlines are actually real people and their stories. And for me, mine began on September 15th, 2019. It's the day I landed in the States with my green card. It was a moment that was filled with so many feelings: fear, hope, anxiety, overwhelm, everything in between. The stakes were high, and unlike a lot of people that move, I didn't have a ready-made life. I stepped into a different world where I had to figure things out from the get-go, really. I sponsored myself. I was self-employed as an actress. There was no HR person to orientate me, and there was no office space or financial runway. I had to really build that infrastructure from the ground up. And it was hard to establish a daily rhythm at first because I didn't have a reason to be anywhere every day. I had a case full of dreams, limited savings, very limited savings. And that feeling of just landing at JFK for the first time, having to identify myself as an immigrant, it's a moment. I had to travel with this package that I wasn't allowed to open, but I knew everything in there was about me, and I had to hand it to the immigration officer on arrival. So you can imagine what that felt like. I think I stopped breathing, my heart was thumping, and I was expecting an interrogation. But to my relief, the officer was quite friendly and was really interested in my IMDb account and a BBC credit I had for the bodyguard, so that was helpful. Then the real work began, navigating subways and social security offices and feeling overstimulated, needing to deal with eSIM cards or dual SIMs, the noise, the UN convention that was on, the busyness and the loudness of New York, the heat. It was so hot for September. I was melting. It was fascinating looking back, just how different. I must have really stood out as someone who was from literally another world. People always say the UK and the US are very similar, but they're also quite different. Started to build a team around me with managers and agents on each coast, and got auditions happening, and that felt good. And then very quickly COVID arrived, and so the scaffolding that I'd been building was quite fragile, I guess, because it had to withstand something that it hadn't had the history to become acclimatized to yet. And then, of course, the communities that I was trying to step into, everybody was moving. You know, New York became this epicenter. People were leaving in droves. Everything became more polarized. Voices around the vaccine, border control, lockdown discussions, everything was changing faster than I could keep up. And then, of course, there were the financial pressures of what to do without work and without income. I didn't quite know what I qualified for. I'd just arrived in the US, but I'd already left the UK. So that was really interesting, being that in-between space of not quite fully established in one country, but no longer part of another. So I felt a lot of concern around my rents. Here they lock you in for a year at a time, and they're high rents. And so you feel that responsibility and that pressure. The margin for error felt like it was shrinking. Although my dreams weren't being shattered dramatically, they were being drained slowly by the pressure of life, and baked into that were things like bereavements, personal loss, and heartache. I don't know, just this real intense loneliness. I would have long stretches where I would be on my own in my apartment, not talking to anyone for days on end, because of the nature of my life, being somebody who worked from home a lot virtually, a new immigrant in a new country, not knowing that many people, being single, take your pick. There were so many things that added to that. And then, of course, on top of that, it was the environment of people coming and going constantly where I lived. It was just that kind of neighborhood. It was like being at Terminal 3 at Heathrow or something. You just got to know people, and then they would move, they would leave, and you'd just be like, oh, what a shame. So my craving for consistency and community was so strong, but I didn't quite know how to make that happen at the same time as well. And then, of course, there was my old life back home, and that started to look and feel very different. COVID arrived there too, but I could also see people going in their direction with their lives, whereas mine was very fluid and theirs had a lot of structure, and I felt the difference of what it was to have just left a few months ago, but to revisit. I felt slightly out of sync. I also felt like I was being airbrushed from the lives of people who for me were security. But yeah, I began to question, like, where's home? Where makes sense? Because each time I'd go back to the UK, I felt like it was a reminder that I perhaps wasn't ready to go back. It felt like there were emotional layers that went with that. First, I didn't understand all of them. I felt bonds being diluted really quickly once I left the UK, eroded to just a Facebook friend or a WhatsApp buddy, when what I really craved was conversation and deep human connection. It's an image we have of older people where they're not talking to anyone and they just sat at home by themselves, but actually that was me for a long time. And I found ways around that eventually, but it took me a minute to get there. I also started to drift back into my old life, which I think I romanticized in my mind. I thought about my grandparents and how their journey was and what they must have gone through to build a new life when they left India to move to the UK. I felt very encouraged and inspired by their endurance and their resilience and what they must have carried as they began to build new foundations in a new land. I felt a sense of guilt and internal conflict at walking away from something they'd worked so hard to secure for me and my family. And yeah, I guess I'd chosen to move into a new country. But on one level I felt distant from people, but on another level I felt closer to my grandparents, just because our stories were beginning to merge, even though I lost some of them during the pandemic as well, which was its own journey. But yeah, I learned what it is to live without guarantees and to have the stories that I'd grown up listening to become real and technicolor almost, you know. It was interesting. It was like we were living on parallel tracks but through different timelines, and that my moving to America was a continuation of what they'd started from India to the UK. And then of course I discovered my faith in a different way. I learned how to lean into that a lot more because nothing else made sense, quite honestly. And so I found myself spending more time developing a prayer life and craving a spiritual community that I could do life with. And I found a sense of being accompanied when the plans kept dissolving, when life felt tough, like really tough. I found comfort in knowing that I had that as a foundation that I could move through life with. My world became about seeking safety more than anything else. Physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, just seeking any space where I didn't have to shrink or have to self-correct all the time. Because what people don't tell you is that as an immigrant you live under different systems, yes, but you're much more conscious of things like governance and authority and control, how much space you take up in a new country, how carefully you choose your words, and how living across different cultures can also sharpen your awareness of power dynamics and safety. Sometimes that could show up in relationships, work environments, legal situations. There was just this awareness that you're being watched more closely or maybe understood less generously. And it wasn't fear, but it wasn't freedom either. What I found is that I craved spaces where I could just soften, where I didn't have to walk on eggshells and be on high alert all the time. So I began exploring ways where I could do that by serving other people, by contributing to the community around me, helping build my new home from home, and to be grateful for every win, big or small. I really began to appreciate the cultural kaleidoscopes that I could live my life through, having multiple identities, being British, living in America, having an Indian background. It was really interesting to be able to share that and for me to integrate into other people's worlds as well, because where I lived was, well, it is the most diverse neighborhood in the whole of the US. So that's been a real gift. I've had such exposure to people from different cultures and different communities. And it's just a reminder of how beautiful the fabric of immigration can be. It depends on which lens you look at it through. I just see so much beauty in the contribution that immigrants make to America and other countries, I'm sure. You know, it's not an easy ride. And I think there's this sense that, a lot of immigrants go and are takers and are there to have an easy life. But actually, there is nothing easy about beginning an immigrant life. It takes complete graft. And then you've got the personal layers that go with that, such as trying to meet somebody. If you're single, trying to date in a place like New York and the complexities that can bring. Oh my gosh. If you know, you know. And I even found myself working as a matchmaker for an executive dating agency on top of that. So not just using my own experiences, but listening to clients who were trying to meet somebody in a very efficient and emotionally guarded place. There was a gap that I would see and feel between connection and commitment. For me, hearing the stories that were shared by male and female clients, it helped me feel less alone, and it was weirdly comforting, actually, if I'm honest, knowing that it wasn't just me getting ghosted or catfished or feeling disposable. I guess there was a time when I was really questioning my sanity and my self-worth, and then I realised there are so many people that are dealing with the same stuff that it makes you feel weirdly connected at the same time. But that lack of steady intimacy, it can amplify the loneliness that you can feel as an immigrant, because you just want to share the journey of life with somebody. And yeah, it's something I haven't really found out here yet. I don't know if and when that's part of this chapter. All I know is that the disappointments, false promises became a theme that I needed to step out of. So I just took a break from dating. And yeah, I found I was having less stress because of that, if I'm honest with you. It's not an ideal way to look at life, especially as somebody who is a romantic. But self-care was more important to me. And honestly, it's been really healthy and a great period of my life to be able to invest that energy into myself and to not feel like a personal failure when there's rejection for reasons I just don't understand sometimes. So yeah, and I'm not saying that that's my forever state. I think I'm ready to step back out there into the dating world, but I just don't know how to do that right now. So, it's an interesting world. And then, of course, on top of that, you've got all the political charge that's going on at the moment, the economic shifts, the social structures that are changing. Life hits differently when you don't have that safety net. There are moments where we take for granted in our homeland, where we just go through life and things unfold in a very organic way. But as an immigrant, you have to really cultivate that. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Steady yourself quickly, and often privately you struggle, but you find ways to keep going. And then, of course, there's a tiredness that can set in over time from, I guess, structural fatigue. Yeah, that's the way I would describe it. Living somewhere that requires a lot of resource means that you're having to work incredibly hard just to keep up with the cost of living, and you don't feel as productive in the areas that you want to invest your time into. So the hustle hangover, it's real. I can definitely say that. I've experienced it, but it's not how I want to live my life. I don't choose to chase excess. I've been trying to maintain ground, but I think even that can take a toll, because from the outside it looks like ambition, but actually on the inside it's vigilance. You're trying to just set up an infrastructure to help you plan ahead and to keep going in the day-to-day rhythm of what it takes to build that new life. And the pressures that you feel, well, they force clarity. You learn very quickly what matters and what doesn't, where you're willing to spend your time and where you're not. I think I've learned how to be emotionally more discerning, and to develop that emotional literacy has been really helpful. Painful, but helpful. I've learned what I need, which is non-negotiable now, Consistency matters, community matters, my faith is really important, and they're the pillars that I really build my life upon, and creativity, definitely. So I don't think this is everybody's experience, but that's been my journey of what it is to be an immigrant in the US. It's really interesting to me because I see the Statue of Liberty from every street corner, in my neighbourhood at least, and it always reminds me of why I made the move and how many have come before me to show me what's possible, and how that statue symbolised arrival. The idea that if you crossed an ocean and you worked hard enough, you could have this amazing life. But today, I also am aware of the complexities of what that represents in 2026, where those ideals are harder to live up to. But I'm also reminded that immigrant life has always been a rich part of the tapestry of life, especially in New York and New Jersey. It's the fabric of what makes up the United States of America. And so it's very sad to me to see that immigration has been treated as a division, when actually it's enriched every aspect of life from what I can see. Immigrants, we come with care, skills, culture. We want to contribute, do our best to be a gift to the country that we're coming into, because we're grateful. And when I see that narrative being respun in a way that doesn't really align with what me and a lot of other people probably see, that's heartbreaking. I feel for people that are in those situations and know what it feels like to carry that weight. So yeah, you're trying to move for safety and sustainability and affordability. There are people who are returning back to places that no longer feel like home for them. And there are other people that are staying, wondering what to do next and how to move through that because of the intense backdrop of political drama and global instability and financial insecurity. It's so much more than just physical movement. It's about emotional endurance and spiritual battles that may or may not tell the whole story. So, yeah, I don't know if this is making sense, but I hope that my experience helps you understand ways that you're forced to decide what actually matters. You never go back to your old self in a way that you used to. Something shifts significantly when you start a new life in a new country. You learn how to do life very differently. And for me, it was really important not to harden, because New York is a hard place, and I'm a soft creature at heart. I'm a creative. I need to feel whatever I'm feeling, and I want to keep that part of me. So having to deal with that too has been really interesting, very intricate. I'm just so grateful to the people that have come on my path, the community that I am part of, my faith sustain me through really difficult times. So this is the squeeze. It's the part where we really try to distill the essence of what we've gained from that story. And for me, it was about learning how to keep the faith, because I had plans, big plans, when I moved out here, and honestly, everything's just been flipped on its head and turned inside out. It's given me something even more beautiful than I could have imagined. It's been very healing. It's helped me find calm in chaos and feel more confident about my life generally, even when there is uncertainty. And somehow I'm beginning to move through that with more ease, a community and a home, a sense of belonging in a place that is full of people that are not from the place where they actually live. I've learned that God can meet me in the mess, because He has, over and over and over again. Yeah, I can't quite explain that one, but sharpening my discernment, seeing life through a slightly different lens has stretched me. I just choose spaces differently now, places where I feel safe, relationships I stay in, knowing when there's wisdom to walk out of something. I've also learned the importance of rest, that waiting is not wasted time, and being between lives doesn't mean that nothing's happening. We're so used to being in the hustle culture, especially where I live. It's all about, resilience and moving fast, etc. But actually, I've seen so much growth and progress in seasons that came with surrender and stillness, sometimes enforced stillness. I'd say that's been really valuable. I don't know what comes next. I just know that no immigrant comes to a new country for an easy ride. It takes pure graft. I see the beauty where maybe others see chaos and instability. How immigrants have lives that are shaped by crossings of borders, forming different identities in different seasons, living between worlds, and how to live with open hands and a soft heart. For me personally, I try to listen more closely and notice the small things in life and build quiet courage. I've started to feel like a blank canvas, a place where anything can unfold. You have fun and you can keep reinventing. You can just keep moving and growing. And I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying that's for everybody. But for me, being back in Cape Town right now, 7 years almost since I first came here, it brings the whole arc into focus. I don't romanticize the journey, but I also don't regret it either. It's been hard, but it's also showing me how to carry a home in different places, how to find community and connection, to keep going when not a lot makes sense around you. I feel like I've gained more than I've given up. It's something I wouldn't trade for anything, because now I know that even when there's no fixed structure that's holding me in place, I know how to create, and I mean really create, and be resourceful and learn to find opportunities, recover from fallbacks, start choosing myself. That's something I wasn't very good at before. So welcome to Sip and Pour. This is the part where I introduce you to some coaching tools, and today I'm going to help you with a framework that I've sometimes gone back to when I've been searching for clarity. And it's based on 3 pillars, if you like: containment, choice, and compassion. And what that means in real life is that when things feel unstable, whether that's emotionally, financially, or politically, I try not to start with decisions. I try to start with containment. And that's really just about trying to ground myself so that I can think more clearly. It might look like me slowing my body down or getting outside into some nature, speaking to an old friend that I can just pour out what's going on. Or sometimes it looks like prayer. It's just about feeling contained so that I can then move on to the second pillar, which is choice. And these are not huge life-defining choices, just small, simple steps. So I might ask myself, what is it that actually needs my attention right now? Where do I focus my energy? And where don't I? Because sometimes the most helpful choice we can take is to take something off the table. That might mean delaying a decision or lowering the bar on something so that I can finish off something else. And then, of course, there's the third pillar, which is compassion. It's something that I used to skip, I'm sure, like many of you. But I try to remind myself to stay kind to myself, to not treat tiredness as failure, to not assume that uncertainty means I'm doing life wrong, because living takes effort. And the last thing we need to do is put self-judgment on top of that, to embrace clarity when it's there and to find ways I can steady myself in that uncertainty. So if you're in a season where nothing really feels that settled, maybe it's not about trying to figure it out, but rather just studying yourself, connect to what you're feeling, and find compassion in the chaos. It's very easy to talk quite harshly to ourselves. So if it helps you to imagine that you're talking to a friend, try that. I find the language we use and the tone that we talk to other people can be softer than how we talk to ourselves. Yes, be honest, but also be kind to yourself. It's very easy to forget that part. It doesn't have to be this big formal exercise, but just observations. Notice moments this week or next week when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're in a moment of heaviness. What words are you using? What images do you associate yourself with? Expectation is that? What pressure might that be? What would help me to feel steady right now? Not what do I have to fix, what do I have to sort? And then what's one thing I can take off my plate, even if it's just temporarily? What's the thing that doesn't need to be decided today and that I can come back to? So just know you don't have to get life right all the time. You can just stay with what works for you and dispose of the rest. You can always come back to things when it makes sense. Take one step at a time. So it's really just looking at the next step and not the whole picture. And for anybody who is interested in more support around how to navigate that territory, I am a trained coach and a facilitator. I have worked with clients for over a decade in leadership, emotional resilience, communication skills, and everything in between. I am here to help people move through uncertainty and navigate that in-between space using psychology and lived experience in different cultures, systems, and geographies, helping people navigate pressure with nuance and deal with emotional complexities that unfold in these situations. Everything I share with you is not just textbook, it's also through the lens of what has worked for other people through my coaching practice. So if that's helpful, you can just go to any of the Lemonade platforms on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and book a free call, and we can talk that through and what would be helpful. This space exists for exactly that purpose, because life, especially right now, doesn't have a lot of clear edges. The world is moving so quickly. Certainty feels like a thing of the past, and a lot of people are struggling to stay steady. I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is how to support other people, how to help you focus on areas that require your attention to get through the other side. For me, I shared with you that faith has been quite a companion to help me navigate the uncertainty. And that might not be everybody's story, but it's definitely been the foundation of what has been useful in making me feel that steadiness in the storms. If any part of this episode feels familiar and you recognize yourself as somebody that is in that in-between, I'm here to produce content around that. I'd love to hear from you what would be helpful. If there's something that's heavy on your heart that you'd like me to talk about and create an episode around, please reach out and let me see what I can do to help you make lemonade from the lemons that you're facing. But for now, thank you so much for listening. And if this resonates, then I would love for you to follow, subscribe, or share it with somebody that might benefit from this. For now, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. I hope it was helpful. And until the next time, take care.